Am I the asshole for manipulating my best friend into breaking up with her boyfriend because I like him? Disclaimer, is not my story time. My best friend and I have known each other for about 3 years. Now, there has always been jealousy between us. We're very competitive because we're both models, and we're always trying to one-up each other with the jobs we get. Luckily, we both do pretty well. We both modeled for Kylie Cosmetics, and we both have OFs. If you know, you know. When it comes to men, we both tend to go for the same type of guy. And yes, he's always a little bit toxic and a little bit abusive. Usually we date rappers, influencers, athletes, actors, or models. And I can guarantee these men are always insecure, which is why they become so toxic. Well, this time around, my bestie decided to start dating a regular guy. He works at an office and he's not toxic at all. In fact, he's got money, stability, doesn't have any mental health issues. Obviously, seeing the fact that she got with somebody who was healthy made me feel like I wasn't doing enough. And after meeting this guy, I realized just how good he is. He's also pretty attractive. I knew that their relationship would not be good for me. I became extremely envious. I was angry at her all the time. That's when I started making up lies about him to my best friend. Told her that he would stare at me a lot and that it made me uncomfortable. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for manipulating my best friend into breaking up with her boyfriend because I liked him? Disclaimer, is not my story time. That's when I started making up straight up lies about him. I told my best friend that he would stare at me and that it made me uncomfortable. And when I told her this, she went crazy on him. She actually confronted him in front of me. Trust me, I wasn't expecting her to do that, but he went out of his way to apologize to me and told me that he didn't mean to make me uncomfortable. And he said that if he even stared at me, it was probably a mistake. Y'all, I know he didn't stare at me. I was lying, but he still apologized to me. This is when I realized just how good a guy he is. And this made me want him even more. I was angrier and more jealous than ever. My envy levels were through the roof. Every time they went out on a date, I would try to sabotage it somehow. I'd go over to her house to help her get ready and randomly start doing her makeup and force her to be late. One time I even pretended to drop a glass of water and I wet her hair just so that she would be late to the date. And it started working. They began fighting and she would tell him that he had no patience with her and he started calling her flaky. This is when I had to go to Instagram. I made an account and pretended to be another girl. I started messaging him, but he wasn't replying. What I did next is bad. Part 3 is that's when I slid into my bestie's boyfriend's DMs pretending I was somebody else. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I spent 2 weeks creating this fake account. I found a random Brazilian model online. I basically stole all her Instagram pictures. I went ahead and made the account and started posting every single day, multiple times a day. And I even started posting on the stories, like stealing her pictures and pretending it was uploaded from that day. I was really good at it. I started messaging him, but nothing. Eventually, I replied to one of his stories and he did end up seeing that one. But he didn't reply, so I knew I had to take it a step further. I know that he's in financing, so I reached out to him with a question about finance. This is when he replied. He offered to give me a free consultation online. Instead of saying yes to that right away, I started asking him questions, and he was answering. But eventually I asked him what city he was living in and if he wanted to hang out. This is when he politely said that he would go out with me, but that he has a girlfriend and that nothing could happen. Told him I was new in town and that I needed friends. He sent me a list of restaurants that I could go to. I mean, how nice is he? But still, he kept it really professional. So I took all of the evidence and I went to my best friend. She hit the roof. She completely believed everything I said. It only took me 2 hours to convince her to leave him. Part 4. Once I convinced my best friend to break up with her boyfriend because I wanted him, everything was easy. I showed her the Instagram DMs, which weren't really that bad, but she still got really mad at him. She even thanked me for going out of my way to prove that he was a lying cheater. According to her, the fact that he even would message his girl back shows that he had an intention to speak to her, even though he didn't actually agree to hang out with her. And I have to agree with that. She ended up breaking up with him that very same day. Then he messaged me asking if I could try to help him get back with her. Of course I said no, but now my goal is to try to get with him. I feel like this is going to be really hard because he's such a good guy, and also I need to keep it secret from my best friend. But I want a man like this, someone loyal and kind. I actually ended up telling my mom about my plan and she tells me not to do it. I know that you guys are probably going to tell me not to do it, but where am I going to find a man like this? Everyone I meet is either an actor or a stupid rapper. Sure, they have money, they're always toxic and abusive. I'm sick of getting ghosted. What should I do? Or should I just leave him alone? My boyfriend tricked me into having sex with his twin brother. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when he made his twin brother go to our first date as a joke. Obviously, I didn't even know he was a twin. So when this guy shows up to the restaurant, I'm like, oh hey. 15 minutes into the date, he starts laughing maniacally. That's when my real date comes out of the bathroom, and they both start pointing and laughing at me. That's when I understood what was going on. My real date sent his twin brother. Here's the thing, they look exactly the same. They even have the same moles in the same places, same exact haircut, and they even have the same tattoo on their necks. And they're both really hot. Their bodies are sculpted to a T, and their faces look like Greek gods. Finally, his brother left, and it was just me and my date. We hit it off and had a great time. Everything was really rushed though. A week later, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I didn't know what to say. He begged me for about 3 days. When I finally said yes, I told him that it was on a trial basis. That's when odd things started happening. He once again started sending his brother on dates with me. After I'd get home from a date, he would text me to say, "How's my brother?" I kept falling for it. Part 3 is my boyfriend tricked me into having sex with his twin brother. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. I finally asked my boyfriend to stop sending his brother on dates with me. He said that it was just too funny and that they both thought it was hilarious. So I asked him if he was getting off on the idea of me and his brother together. Then he said, "Why? Would you like that?" And I said, "Of course not. I like you, not your brother." Then he said, "But we're exactly the same." Then he says, "What if you already did it with my brother and you just don't know it?" It actually took me a minute to think about it. I mean, how could I know? They both look exactly the same. At this point, I had given my boyfriend a key to my apartment. Big mistake. Later on that night, I'm dead asleep in bed. I hear my door open and I see that it's my boyfriend. Or at least who I thought was my boyfriend. He climbs into my bed and we have sex. I'm half asleep, but I was still open to it. The next morning, he's gone. I call my boyfriend and ask him why he left. Then he says, "What are you talking about? I was never in your apartment." I literally could have shat my bed. Then he said, "You actually fell for it? That wasn't me, that was my brother." That's when he asked me if I would be open to a relationship with the two of them. Apparently, his brother is obsessed with me. What should I do? My boyfriend tricked me into having sex with his twin brother. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's on Instagram. My boyfriend is the most obnoxious man I've ever met. We started dating 3 months ago. When I met him, I really wasn't into him at all. I met him through friends, and when we would all hang out, he was always the loudest one. He was always making the most inappropriate jokes, and was always seeking attention from everyone else. I'm the complete opposite. I like to listen to people speak. I never raise my voice and I don't try to be obnoxiously loud. So I thought he was the biggest piece of shit when I met him. I couldn't relate at all to him. Then he came up to me at a party and started talking to me. That's when I found out that we had a lot of things in common. One of the things that we kept talking about was role playing. I'm into role playing, but I like to keep it safe. Whereas he likes to do some crazy stuff. He's into things like rape fantasies. I told him I was not interested in that, but we kept seeing each other through friends. Finally, after about a month, he asked me out on a date and I said yes. At this point, I knew that he was loud and obnoxious, but he was funny and made me laugh all the time. And I love a guy that can make me laugh. On our first date, he sent his twin brother as a joke. Thought it was hilarious that I confused them. Part 2. Story time about how my husband died and his best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. My husband and I were married for almost a decade. During that time, we had 2 kids. And of course, his passing was completely devastating to our families. And 2 weeks after my husband died, I was still grieving. But his best friend started coming around our house a lot. First, he was very emotional. Him and my husband were best friends for about 7 years. They saw each other almost every day. Not only did they work together, but they also would go to the gym together and pretty much hang out all the time. So I know this guy really, really well. When my husband would invite him over, I never got the feeling that he liked me. I mean, sure, sometimes I caught him staring at me, but I'm beautiful, so I understand. So after my husband passed, he started coming over as in, "I want to take care of you," and we would just kind of cry together. I took this as his way of trying to help my husband, so I just thought he was being really sweet. But exactly 1 month after my husband passed away, he started asking me weird questions. Number 1, do you want to start dating again? Number 2, don't you feel lonely at night? Number 3, you're still so young and beautiful. You need to give yourself a chance with someone else. Mind you, I'm still grieving. To these questions, I would usually say no. Obviously, I mean, why would I even be thinking about those things? I didn't put too much mind to the questions, but a few days later, he came over after he had been at a bar. As soon as I opened the door to him, he said, "Can I kiss you?" And then he did without me saying yes. Part 2. Story time about how my dead husband's best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's on Instagram. As soon as I opened the door, he asked me if he could kiss me, and I didn't say anything. And he grabbed me and just started kissing me. Of course, I pushed him away and told him that he needed to leave. That's when he said, "But you didn't say no." I told him I didn't say anything because I was shocked he would even ask me that. That's when he walked into the house without me inviting him, went straight to the fridge and opened up a beer. Then he starts yelling at me for giving him mixed signals. He says that since my husband died, all I've been doing is flirting with him. Since when is grieving flirting? I told him that he was completely wrong and that he needed to leave again. Then he said, "No, I'm not leaving here until you tell me the truth." That I was secretly in love with him and that I actually wanted to be with him. No, this wasn't funny to me at all. He was slurring his words and barely could stand up. I knew my kids were upstairs, so all I wanted to do was get him out of the house. That's when I grabbed my phone and started texting one of my other husband's best friends. I texted him 911, "Please come to our house now." He responded right away saying, "I'm coming over." After another minute of this guy ranting at me, I told him I was sorry for giving him mixed signals and that was never my intention, blah, blah, blah. Then he asked me out on a date. He said that he wanted to take me out and show me a good time. I said no, and I asked him to leave again, but he wouldn't. Finally, someone knocks on the door. Part 3 is a story time about how my dead husband's best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's on Instagram. That's when he asked me out on a date and started walking closer to me. Finally, someone knocked on the door, and it was my other husband's friend who I texted to come help me. I ran over to the door quickly and I opened it. That's when my husband's best friend, who was drunk in my house asking me out on a date, forcing me to kiss him, tells the other guy that he needs to leave. So I asked the other friend if he could just take this guy home. He said, "Yeah, of course." And he told him, "You're drunk. I'm gonna take you home now." They left together together without incident, and I was really relieved. But after that, I knew to watch my back now. So here's what happened. He started texting me every now and then asking me if I wanted to go to dinner, and I would not even respond to him. And after that, he started showing up to different places I was at. For example, I go to Pilates classes 5 times a week. This place is near my house, and one day he just showed up trying to take a class. As soon as I saw him, I told the instructor and they kicked him out. That's when he came back and said that he did nothing wrong and that he deserved to be in the class too. He even paid the year up front, so they had no choice but to let him in. Instead, I left. Then he followed me outside to the parking lot and told me that I needed to relax. Said it's not like I'm following you, which he clearly was. I got in my car and left. That very same night, he sent me a message apologizing for acting crazy. Then he told me that all he wanted was just to be close to me and the kids. By the way, my kids really do love him. They ask about him all the time since he stopped coming over, and I don't even know what to tell them. After a few weeks of him not acting crazy, he asked me if he could come over and I said yes. Decided to invite all my husband's friends and we had a nice dinner. But again, this guy asked me out. I said no, but my best friend thinks I should give him a shot. He's good looking and rich. What do you guys think? My best friend always projects her insecurities onto me. Should I break up with her? My best friend and I have known each other for exactly 2 years. We met in college and hit it off right away. We're both Latinas and we come from really big families. I have 2 other sisters and we get along really well. We always hype each other up and have each other's backs. A few months after I started my friendship with my best friend, let's call her Lucia. Lucia started showing some really toxic qualities. Sometimes I think I'm just reading too much into it or overreacting. So you let me know. First of all, she would start talking bad about my sisters in front of me. She would make comments like, wow, your sister's gained weight, or wow, your sister has cellulite. When she first did this, I would just defend my sisters, but then I realized that that just made her want to keep talking more trash. So if she ever said anything about my sisters, I wouldn't say anything. At the time our friendship started, I had a really big crush on this guy. He and I went to the same gym and I never had the courage to speak to him, not until my sister convinced me to. I finally spoke to him at the gym and we actually hit it off. We would work out together every now and then and he finally asked me out on a date. The day of our date, my best friend came over to my house, and while I was getting ready, she started saying really weird things. At first, she told me that I should wash my hair because it looked oily. I told her my hair was freshly washed. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I could see her reflection and she just rolled her eyes at me. This is when things started clicking. Part 2 is up. My brother-in-law keeps trying to hook up with me. Should I tell my jealous husband? That's when he started coming into my office to flirt with me. He would compliment everything about me. He would tell me that I had a great body, that I had a beautiful face. I know that he could visibly see how uncomfortable it made me, but he kept going. Of course, it never occurred to me to tell my husband because of how violent he gets when he's jealous. And he knew that, which is why he kept pushing it. One day, my husband and him went to a local bar after finishing up work at home. When they came home, my husband was completely wasted. My brother-in-law put my husband in our bed and told me that I should get him some water. I went down to the kitchen to grab my husband a bottle of water, but my brother-in-law followed me into the kitchen, cornered me up against the fridge and tried to kiss me. By the way, I could smell the alcohol on him, so I knew he was drunk. I pushed him away and told him not to touch me. That's when he started apologizing. He said, I thought you wanted it. As I started walking away, he grabbed my arm and kissed me. But the truth is, part of me liked it. Truthfully, I always found my brother-in-law very attractive. By the way, it's not like I just let him kiss me. I was trying to fight him off. When he let me go, I slapped him and I ran upstairs. Of course, I avoided him after that. A few days later, I was having dinner with my friends when my brother-in-law shows up at the restaurant and sits at a table right across from us. Proceeded to just stare at me the whole time. Finally got up to the bathroom and he followed me. That's when he grabbed me and kissed me again. Part 3 is up. My brother-in-law keeps trying to hook up with me. Should I tell my husband? My husband is a very, very jealous man. He can't stand it when I get hit on or even stared at. The few times that I've gotten hit on in front of him, he actually started a fight with the guy. So I basically live in fear of anybody hitting on me in front of him. He's also very jealous with our friends. We have a really big group of friends and a lot of them are males. He's outright told our male friends to not touch me or ever even hug me or kiss me when they see me. By the way, a lot of these guys are already married and in relationships. So the fact that my husband does that is just ridiculous. It's obviously humiliating to me. The only person my husband is not jealous of is his own brother. And at first I thought this was a good thing. His brother offered to move in with us while we were renovating our house. My husband and him basically work all day on the house. I get to work from home, so I'm usually in my own office. A few weeks ago, my brother-in-law started coming into my office. First, he would just talk to me, and then it turned into flirting. Then he started insinuating how good looking I was, how lucky my husband is. Part 2 is up. My brother-in-law keeps trying to hook up with me. Should I tell my husband? My husband is a very, very jealous man. He can't stand it when I get hit on or even stared at. The few times that I've gotten hit on in front of him, he actually started a fight with the guy. So I basically live in fear of anybody hitting on me in front of him. He's also very jealous with our friends. We have a really big group of friends and a lot of them are males. He's outright told our male friends to not touch me or ever even hug me or kiss me when they see me. By the way, a lot of these guys are already married and in relationships. So the fact that my husband does that is just ridiculous. It's obviously humiliating to me. The only person my husband is not jealous of is his own brother. And at first I thought this was a good thing. His brother offered to move in with us while we were renovating our house. My husband and him basically work all day on the house. I get to work from home, so I'm usually in my own office. A few weeks ago, my brother-in-law started coming into my office. First, he would just talk to me, and then it turned into flirting. Then he started insinuating how good looking I was, how lucky my husband is. Part 2 is up. I'm attracted to my father-in-law and I kind of want to hook up with him. Disclaimer is not my story time. Instead of me on Instagram, I decided to start flirting with him a little bit more. I kind of wanted to see what he would say. My parents-in-law invited me and my husband over to their house for barbecue. So I decided to wear a thong bikini. My father-in-law was grilling in the backyard and my mother-in-law was inside making a salad. So of course, I took off all my clothes and I pranced around the pool in my thong bikini. I positioned myself perfectly so that my father-in-law had a great view of my ass. I also went up to him and started talking. I would touch his shoulder every now and then. That's when he said, "If I didn't know any better, I would think that you're flirting with me." Then he smiled. I almost died. I laughed with him too. And then my stupid husband came outside. That was 2 days ago. You guys tell me, but in my opinion, it sounded like he was liking it. For the rest of the barbecue, every time I would turn to look at him, he was always looking at me, so I knew it was working. But now I'm like, what's the goal? Do I really want to ruin my relationship with my husband and ruin his parents' relationship? Or do you think we can keep it on the down low? What should I do? I'm attracted to my father-in-law and I kind of want to hook up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I met a little over a year ago. We actually met on vacation and we happened to live in the same city, so we decided to go on a date when we got back. 2 months later, we got engaged. My family was completely against it though. My parents thought it was way too quick for us to get married. But here's the thing, I'm 32 and I was desperate at that point for somebody to just ask me to marry them. And looking back, that was completely wrong of me. My parents were so against it that when they met my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, they told him that we should just date a little bit longer before we even decided to get engaged. But of course, eventually we made the decision on our own and my parents just had to deal with it. By the time we had gotten engaged, I had only met his mom. His dad traveled a lot for work, so he was pretty much never home. So here's a little backstory on my husband. He was born in the same city I was, and his parents had him when they were 14 and 15. They were incredibly young. So his parents were more like his friends. They had so much fun and hung out together. It was always a really good time. We decided to have an engagement party, and that's when I met his dad. And it was infatuation at first sight. Part 2 is story time about how I've never farted in front of my boyfriend and can't even poop if he's in my house, which led me to pooping in my car by mistake. Disclaimer is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 months. We are so in love and we met through a dating app. He even moved into my apartment. I know some might say it's quick, but it's just meant to be. We are so in love. We get along super well. We're so attracted to each other. Our sexy time is like amazing, like the best I have ever had. And I was the one that asked him to move in with me and he said yes right away. I actually thought he was going to say no, but he was so down for it that I was so happy. Before he moved in, he actually would come over to my house all the time and he started farting in front of me. It was cute, funny, whatever. But I can't bring myself to doing it in front of him. I can't even poo when he's in my apartment, much less could I poo when I was at his. So I found myself having to hold it in all day long. Anytime we would go to a restaurant, I would try to go, but sometimes I just couldn't go because I knew that he was there. It's all become very complicated. Now that he moved into my place, we love watching movies. So we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, and suddenly I felt the urge to go to the bathroom. There was no way I was going to go poop while he was there. Out of nowhere, I jump up and tell him that I have to go out. I get in my car, part 2 is up. Story time about how I can't fart in front of my boyfriend or even poop when he's in the same place as me, which caused me to poo in my car by mistake. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Instead of me on Instagram. Out of nowhere, I jump off the couch and tell him I have to go to the supermarket. He offers to go for me and I said no. But in hindsight, I should have said, yeah, sure, you go, so that I could stay alone in the apartment by myself and go poo. I grab my keys and jump in the car. And then suddenly, I start pooping. I couldn't control myself. I couldn't believe it was happening right then and there. I stopped the car and pulled over and just pooped in my car. Luckily, I was wearing baggy pants, so you couldn't really notice it. Suddenly, I remembered I had an extra change of clothes in my car. I looked behind me and there it was, a pair of jeans. I take off my sweatpants and try to wipe myself as best as I could. And I actually went to a CVS, went into the bathroom, cleaned myself. I even bought baby wipes. Oh my god. I changed into the jeans and I got back in the car and went home. When I get home, my boyfriend says, "Did you just change?" Then I told him I ripped my pants somehow in the grocery store. And then he said, "You didn't bring anything back from the grocery store." And I didn't know what to say. Part 3 is up. Time about how I can't fart in front of my boyfriend and this caused me to poop in my car by mistake. Disclaimer is not my story time. I was on me on Instagram. I told him that I had ripped my pants, so I changed into other pants. And then he asked, "But you didn't bring anything back from the supermarket." And I said, "Oh yeah, you're right." Then I told him that I went to CVS instead because I needed baby wipes, which I actually did buy them, so I showed them to him. But let's remember I had just pooped on myself, so I really wanted to take a shower. So I tell him, "Hey babe, I'm actually going to take a shower because I just got my period." Then he says, "But you just had your period last week." I just kept digging a bigger and bigger grave. And he sits me down and says, "What's going on?" I just couldn't lie anymore. And I told him the truth, that I had pooped in the car because I didn't want to poop in the apartment because he was there. That's when he started laughing maniacally and told me that I was being so stupid. To this day, I still can't fart in front of my boyfriend. And I still can't go to the bathroom. I'm not sure how to fix this or how to even go about actually doing it for the first time. So maybe you guys have some ideas. Also, never going back to that CVS because I'm pretty sure I didn't put the pants in the trash and they were just lying on the floor and they saw me go in. What should I do? Story time about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. Growing up, I was really awkward. My parents always used to call me the ugly duckling, but my dad told me not to worry, that when I would grow up, I would become beautiful. Honestly, this really stuck to my head, and I am very beautiful now. I used to have braces, acne. My hair has always been curly, but I didn't know how to treat it back then. My mom had really straight hair, so she had no idea how to do my hair either. And this was the toughest thing for me. I would show up to school with knots in my hair because I didn't even know how to brush it. Eventually, my mom did start taking better care of my hair, which really helped. I also didn't know how to dress for my body. I wore big hoodies, big t-shirts, while the other girls in my high school dressed for their body type. I honestly just had no clue. I did get bullied, but mostly by boys. I think the girls probably just felt bad for me, so I never really had problems with other girls. A group of boys would always bother me. One of them even asked me out, pretending that he wanted to go out with me. Of course I said yes because I actually believed him. He asked me to go to the movies, and when I showed up, he wasn't there. I decided to go watch the movie anyway, but the next day in school, I couldn't hear the end of it. To my face, this guy called me stupid. A few days later, they made a list of the ugliest girls. Part 2 is story time about how I was voted the ugliest girl in high school. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. That's when the boys came out with the list of the ugliest girls in high school. What they did was pass around some flyers with all the names on it, and then they had people write the number 1 ugliest girl on the list. As soon as I saw my name on the list, I wanted to die. I pretended I was sick and went home. There was this one girl who actually stood up for me and the rest of the girls, and she was actually one of the prettiest girls in the entire school. She told everyone to knock it off, but nobody listened to her. Instead, the boys added her to the list as well, but there was no way that she was going to get voted number 1. I would show up every day to school that week wishing that I was dead. Finally, on Friday, they came out with the winner. And of course, everyone picked me. I was completely mortified, but I actually started laughing when I saw the list. It was like the stress from the entire week had finally accumulated, and my reaction was to just laugh. While they were all hoping that I was just going to break down and cry, I started to laugh in their faces. The teacher asked me what was wrong and I showed her the list. She ran over to the principal's office and everything became way too dramatic for me. So I literally decided to run away from school. When I got home, I told my parents everything. Part 3 is up.